Hello and welcome to The Green Voice. My name is Grant Ervin with S&B USA, coming to you from the Center for Media Innovation here at Point Park Studios. I got Wayne Gaines here in the controls. Wayne is over there keeping us on tune. And today I have with me Jim Barry. Jim from Duquesne Light Company. Jim, how are you?
I'm well. Appreciate you having me.
Thanks for wearing your green. I really appreciate that.
Yep.
So standard issue, like making sure during Earth Week, Earth Month, that they got you dressed properly at Duquesne Light.
You know, we're always promoting green, right, as far as the vegetation management department's concerned. So not standard issue, but I'll say one for me. Put it that way.
Okay,
so.
That's pretty nice. Yeah. Put a word in.
We were talking about the arbor wear earlier, so we'll throw a plug in. But yeah, it was
okay. Nice. Well, thanks for joining us here today. We really appreciate it. Always great to have our partners at Duquesne Light here on The Green Voice talking about all the wonderful stuff they do. The topic comes up a lot in the sustainability circles around vegetation management and tree planting, tree pruning, and all the different activities that go alongside of it. So we're really grateful that you're here with us today to shine some light on some of those activities. But maybe first, before you get started, just do a little introduction of who you are and kind of the role that you have within Duquesne Light, because oftentimes we think about power and energy and electrons, but we don't necessarily always connect it with vegetation management and trees and those sorts of things, although that's a very big part of it. I'm sure we're going to learn more, but maybe a little bit of background.
Yeah, sure. So Jim Barry, I'm our General Manager of Vegetation Management. I've been at Duquesne Light now for 16 years, and I'll say I've held various positions across the organization, but for, I'll say, 13 of those years, it was all vegetation management. So 3 years was in our work planning group. But prior to that, I worked as a contractor across the United States doing vegetation management work and inspections and things like that. And prior to that, I got my bachelor's of forestry from Pennsylvania State University. So
we are, huh?
That's right. Yeah.
Okay.
You got the blue and white on, which is good. So
I didn't plan it. I'm a Pitt guy, but
we'll
I heard you were coming. So,
but So I think grew up in central Pennsylvania and like the mountains, right? And I think just surrounded by trees and just a tree lover as a whole. And it's just graduating with a forestry degree. You're not typically thinking about utility vegetation management, but I'll say after there was a large blackout in 2003 that some people may remember, like the Pittsburgh region really wasn't impacted by it, but it was caused by a tree, and there was a lot of folks that were out of power, in the Northeast for a long period of time, which ultimately pushed into motion utility vegetation management, and it's been a good run here for me, like nice. in the industry and at Duquesne Light. So that's where I'm at.
That's great. I'm really curious about the forestry degree, because I get a lot of questions from folks about how do they get involved into sustainability and different career paths, and effectively how can they find their way. You gave kind of your interest, but talk to me about the forestry degree. And I know Penn State's really noted for kind of their work in that space. So talk to us a little bit about that.
Yeah, so at the time, I think, forest resource management was a lot different than what it is today, right? So I think generally at the time, what was I interested in, right? It's always tough when you're going into school, right? Like, what do I want to do?
And they expect that you have it already figured out.
That's right, yeah. And, it's like I'd like to be outdoors, do things, and just... That was a major that like caught my eye, right?
Okay.
I was like, all right, well, I like trees, so like you start learning about it, and it's managing the forest, right? Yeah. Which is many different ways of doing that, right? And I think it was a good opportunity, like when it presented itself to me, and I was happy that everything worked out the way it has so far. So
let's dive into the Duquesne Light side of this. I'm curious because there's a couple of things I'd love to get into, but one is talk to us. Start first with like the footprint and what vegetation management does, because you guys are based here in Allegheny County, serve Beaver County also, right? What does that footprint look like? and your approach to vegetation management at Duquesne Light? Maybe like start at the 30,000 foot level, and then we can like work our way down.
Yeah, I think, Allegheny and Beaver County, right? So we're 600,000 plus customers. Not everybody has a tree on their property, but we partner with 4 preferred line clearance qualified tree contractors, right? And they work in partnership with IBEW 1919.
Okay.
And we bring professionals to the table, right, to execute the work that we do on a day-to-day basis.
So that's like the electricians working alongside.
That's the tree workers.
The tree workers is part of IBEW.
That's right. That's
Got
correct.
It. Okay.
So my team specifically, right, we've got 2 supervisors, a specialist, and a group of associates, right? And one portion of those folks are out. We pre-plan our work 1 year in advance, right?
Okay.
So we're out putting that prescription together, right? So we're identifying every tree that needs to be either pruned, removed, right, for the following calendar year.
Wow.
Yeah.
I mean, so that's. I mean, I'm just thinking about this. Like the footprint that's a lot.
Oh yeah,
across 2 counties.
Yeah.
And does it? So are you surveying, or like how are you gathering data and intelligence in terms of developing those plans?
Yeah, so we've got 6,000 overhead distribution circuit miles, right? Distribution circuit miles being the ones that are feeding all of our customers.
Okay.
And we have a plan, an established plan that ultimately we do approximately like 1,300 miles annually.
Okay.
Right. So, and then there's circuits, right? So each circuit's geographically located, and we would go out and we would just do an assessment, right? Which trees have grown back since the prior, maintenance cycle, which trees have been impacted externally, right, by wind or insect disease, something like that we would likely target for removal. But again, we're out, we're planning all that's recorded into a work management system, and all that's being executed daily on a mobile device.
Yeah, I was going to curious, like, what is the data method? Like on-site inspection? Are you using, different types of technology to collect information, drones, photography, things like that?
Yeah, I think for our distribution system, it's primarily boots on the ground. Right?
Okay,
so
that's still the most effective way.
Currently, that's correct. We're working with vendors in the technology space to do a risk-based analysis of vegetation that's out there.
Okay.
I think just based on our service territory, we've got a lot of steep hillsides, we got shallow soils, right? So we've got large mature trees, right, that are starting to grow, right? The base of that tree is right where our facilities start, right? So there's always going to be risk out there. So that's where it comes into having the group of certified arborists, right, that are employed by Duquesne Light to go out and do that analysis to say, you know what, these are healthy trees. They don't need to be mitigated, at this point in time, and, carry on down the road to ensure that we continue to provide safe and reliable service to our customers.
Interesting. You just brought up the area of risk, and I can imagine that's like obviously a big piece of the puzzle in terms of the analysis. What are some of those risks that, like, talk us through that? Like, you see a problem. What is a type of problem? Like roots kind of popping up on sidewalks, or leaning, or like what are some of the things that are, particularly for listeners, I guess, that all the eyes that eyes on the issue are always helpful, right? That can help you in terms of identifying those challenges to system delivery.
Yeah, and I think it's similar to like the forest management that we talked about, right? So every site's going to be different.
Yep.
Ultimately, it's going to be the health of the tree, the location, right? Our overhead facilities that are going to be impacted, right? And then the amount of customers as well that would likely be impacted, right?
Yeah.
So, if we've got a large dead tree that's going to impact, an entire neighborhood, like we're likely to target that tree. Not that we wouldn't target a dead tree, right? Just regardless of location, but when you're looking at risk, right? It's what's the probability, and what's the impact,
right?
So like, is it likely to impact like a larger facility? If yes, then like we're obviously going to,
that jumps up on the priority scale.
That's right. Yep.
Yeah. What with that then, one of the things I was curious about, you guys are doing your assessments. How closely do you work with local governments and communities and even other utilities? Like, what do those partnerships look like on the ground for you guys?
Yeah, fairly consistently, right? We're out ahead of the project. So prior to the pre-planning taking place, prior to us talking with customers, we're letting the townships, the boroughs, right, each of the neighborhoods. We'll be talking with the city council folks, right? So
Yeah.
I'm on the Shade Tree Commission for the city of Pittsburgh as
nice.
well. So
Okay.
but yeah, we're out and we're talking with the communities to give them a heads up, right? Like, hey, we're going to be out, we're going to be assessing trees, because everybody's lovers of trees, right? I'm a lover of trees,
Yeah.
right?
People like to hug them.
That's right,
Yeah.
and I think and that's okay, right? And they should, right? Because they're providing benefits for everybody, and ultimately, someone comes home. And hey, I've got a door hanger, right? Because Duquesne Light was here to tell me they need to cut a tree down or prune it, right? They need to be able to get in contact with somebody, and we want to make sure we have that escalation point identified up front. So again, we're talking with the communities, whether it's borough managers, mayors, right? And then we're out doing that assessment of the trees, right, along our facilities, and notifying our customers, right, that this is the work that we plan to do, right?
Yeah.
We provide that opportunity for discussion, right, and inform them of the work and why we've identified the work to be done. So
You mentioned something earlier, right tree, right place.
yeah,
Talk me through that.
yeah. So right tree, right place has been ongoing for years, right?
Okay.
You
Is
think
there different interpretations?
No. I mean there could be, right? So, but ultimately it's about utility compatible tree species, shrubs, right? Things that aren't going to grow taller than, we'll say, 15 to 20 feet, right? Within essentially the wire space,
Yep.
or within like striking distance of like our facilities, right? So I would say if you were to think about like a profile of our pole, right? Like how many feet away from that would a 20 feet tall tree need to be placed?
Okay.
And then beyond that, right? I think when people are placing trees or wanting to plant trees, it's always good to consult, right? Duquesne Light.
Sure.
Like we'll have somebody come out. Hey, we want to plant a tree. Is this a good location for it? Also, right, like always remembering to call before you dig.
Yeah.
Right. So you don't want to be getting into any underground utilities or something like that. But right tree, right place is just something that we always promote, right? And I'll say, like, a lot of those trees are flowering, right? They're showy. And they're good in the springtime, and less maintenance ultimately as well than some of the larger tall growing trees. But pulling some of those larger trees back on properties, and they can grow, and ultimately it's going to help with energy conservation and things like that. So,
do you have any good examples that you could pass on?
Yeah, I would say so. Hornbeams are good low growing trees. I think crab apples. Ivory silk trees are also good. It's going to be more popular in the nursery space right now.
Okay.
So it's also like what's available, what's hardy, right?
Yeah.
Like what can you plant that's actually going to be sustainable in its location too, right? So that's why it also helps to consult, right? That expert to understand, like, because you may pick you may have a tree that loves wet feet, right? But,
wet feet,
right? Like their roots need to have water consistently, right? But you live in your soil's dry and you don't get a lot of water, so that tree's likely not going to survive. So you want to consult the experts in that situation. And I think we actually have a list of approved species on our vegetation management website with Duquesne Light.
Okay.
So I would recommend folks go take a look there for some of those. But crabapple, dogwood, they're going to be typically the ones that I would
your go-tos.
Yep. Serviceberry can grow tall, right?
Okay.
And in like an experimental forest, which there are some across the United States, which it's very neat to see, but it's not going to thrive here.
I'm curious, and this might just be a perception issue for me, but maybe you can break this down. Are they? We're all in Western Pennsylvania, right? So we established kind of a region. There's obviously similar weather patterns and things of that nature that we're all accustomed to as is kind of vegetation. Are there differences, even subtle ones, between, say, Allegheny and Beaver County?
I think between Allegheny and Beaver, likely not so much.
Okay.
And it's going to be based on like the temperate zones, right?
Yeah.
And there's anybody could like reference that, but I'll say generally speaking, where we're at in Southwest Pennsylvania, most species are going to thrive as long as you put the right species in the right place.
Okay.
Right.
So they're pretty similar.
That's right.
Okay.
You get further north, then you get much colder, right? And it's just gonna a different species mix, right? Is what you're gonna see. So
what's that line like? Interstate 80?
Yeah, I'd say probably slightly south of 80, but I'd say 80 is probably a good rule of thumb. But as you travel east in PA, right, then you get a little closer to like the Chesapeake, so like that drops down, right?
Yep.
So it's like you get up towards the Poconos, it's going to be right. So just it flows, right?
It flows.
And
it's subtle though, right?
It is subtle.
Yeah.
And I'll say it's changed over time, right? In like as we've seen warming,
yes,
like across the country, and you've seen some of the more southern species actually be able to thrive in Southwest Pittsburgh. Yeah.
So actually, you led into where I wanted to take this. Like, so how have you noticed those differences over the course of, like, say, your college career to now, in terms of that species? That's kind of A, but the other is weather, because that's the other point I wanted to get into. Like, how quickly has it changed?
Yeah, I think the species piece is going to be less dramatic.
Okay.
Right. So I think it's going.
But there is a change.
Oh, the 100%. Yeah, I think again you're seeing. Certain southern species are just thriving more in like the landscaped areas, right? It's not like we're having
forests totally change over.
That's right, not even close, right?
Okay.
It's going to be more of the planted species that are able to thrive because of the weather change. You talk about weather, it's severe, right? Like I said, I've been at Duquesne Light for 15 years. And I'll say just even the storms alone, I think for like, we'll say the past 5 years have significantly, the frequency has increased.
Okay.
Right. As well as the severity. Right. So it's a matter of like.
Frequency meaning more.
That's right.
Okay.
And you think about, again, our service footprint is primarily all of Beaver and Allegheny County. We could have localized storms, right? We could have something down in, say, like the Baldwin area, right?
Okay.
Or could be up in Ross Township, could be out in the East Hill somewhere, right? But like it depends on that specific weather pattern and where it's like impacting at that moment. But the severities has definitely increased in my time here.
Interesting. And has it also been, again, this is perception versus reality, has it, you mentioned like Baldwin, for example, have those storms been more acute, meaning in like a targeted area? Like you could have a storm in Baldwin and nothing happened in the south side, or are they broader, meaning that like you'll have, or both, like, or will you have like big fronts come through?
I think it's all the above.
Wow.
Right? So we've seen, more severe localized storms, but then we've also seen larger events that impact the entire service territory.
Wow.
So
yeah, like the ones you guys, we the collective we dealt with last year. I mean, I was really amazed, and I have friends at Duquesne, and just hearing about the all hands on deck response and the time and the intensity because of that storm. Talk us through what that meant for vegetation management in terms of your team and the impact that had and how you responded.
Yeah, and I think talking earlier here, right? We're 24/7, 365 regardless, right? Like we are here to provide safe, reliable service to our customers, no matter the time of day. And I think when these large storm events hit, depending on the size of them, we are we're preparing for them now, right? Like we've got technology where we're tracking the potential impacts or incidents that may be occurring. We're staffing up. We're working around the clock, right? We're 16, 12-hour,
shifts,
16 hours or 12-hour shifts
to be prepared.
That's right. And we're pre-staffing crews, right? Our vegetation contractor crews that we talked about. We have approximately 200 line clearance qualified tree professionals on a day-to-day basis, just performing our routine management.
Okay.
Right. But when these larger events occur, we're staffing up. We're bringing more folks in from, typically with the same contractors, right? But they're bringing folks from outside to ultimately assist with restoration, and because we're also bringing on additional line workers at the same time, right?
Because they have to build their bandwidth too.
That's right.
Yeah.
So we need to be out in front, right, clearing trees, so they can then get in and reconstruct, right after the devastation hits,
happens.
right? So
are you using any? You mentioned being prepared. Like, are you using predictive tools and like? We know these storms are getting more frequent, more intense.
Yep.
What's that like? Is that using NOAA and other sorts of
Yep.
weather-related kind of data that's out there that you're able to kind of start to see things?
Yeah, NOAA's a great resource for us, right? And they're giving us like daily and in multiple times per day updates. We do have some other risk indicators that are out there as far as technology is concerned, and that's really just looking at past outages and in the weather that's likely to impact us. So it allows for us to plan better, right, and be more prepared in those instances. So.
Yeah. That's really fascinating to see that. I mean, we've had at S&B in kind of our work in the construction space, we've seen like NOAA being a really great tool in terms of like work on the water. Right, understanding kind of flows and frequencies and things of that nature, but also like understanding what it means beyond what happens beyond the service territory. Oftentimes, or the project area, oftentimes impacts what's coming literally downstream in cases, which has been kind of a big learning opportunity, I think.
Yeah, and I think technology is just going to continue to get better for all the industries, right? And I think we're we've been dabbling in this for quite some time, and we just continue to mature with it. So it's a great opportunity, I think, to just continue to grow and have continuous improvement, right, in the industry and locally here at Duquesne Light.
Interesting. A couple final questions I wanted to ask. One is just the best management practices. Duquesne's always been a leader. I know in like the energy space, and you're obviously kind of that type of leader in the vegetation management. Do you share information across the industry, and what are some of those best management practices that you're pulling from other places, into the work here in southwestern Pennsylvania?
Yeah, I think 100%. And I personally participate in a lot of different like boards and things across the United States. Utility Arborists Association, the International Society of Arboriculture, right? So the team that's reporting up through me, we're all certified arborists. But at the same time, you asked, Duquesne Light is a Tree Line USA electric utility, right? And we've been that way for 24 years, and we're like in the top 5 as far as like consecutive years of having that recognition. And really it's about safety, best practice, education, tree planting, right, and conservation as a whole. And I think, for example, yesterday we had all 200 of our line clearance qualified tree professionals sitting in a room. Right, we focused on safety. We focused on best practice. We had off-site or folks from the industry come out and talk with us, right, and just really reinforce like what best practice is. But just a refresher for folks and get everybody in the same room, because they're all IBEW 1919. But you work for somebody, I work for somebody else. You want them to all have a consecutive message, which is ultimately Duquesne Light is out to promote safe, reliable service through utility best vegetation management practices, right? And whether that's pruning, removal, herbicide application, right? We want to do it. We want to have our best foot forward, right? And be professional with our customers on a daily basis.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Just on that IBEW side, I know it's this case on the electrical side of the ledger, but are you seeing the need also to build and bring in talent and build that workforce component as well?
I think the vegetation management space is always going to need to continue to look to build the talent.
Yeah.
I'll say, and I continue to use the the term line clearance qualified tree professional, right? You can't just put anybody in a tree.
Right.
It is a profession, right? And these folks are, hats off to them on the work that they do every single day, right? Whether it's, in somebody's front yard, right, or it's out on a right of way. It's tough work, and not everybody can do it. And I think, we need to continue to look to grow that group of individuals, because we've seen some, we're bringing folks in from out of like Pittsburgh, like we're locally getting individuals to come and work with the contractors, but based on the volume of work that we have, they can't always support that.
Sure.
So they do have to bring folks from outside. So
it's important.
Yeah.
One final question. The idea of kind of innovation is a big part of the Duquesne Light culture. We've talked about workforce. We've talked about kind of the climate resilience components of things, and the technologies and data that you guys are using. What do you see are some of the things up ahead? Whether it's for you and Duquesne Light, or more specifically across the industry in terms of like the tree maintenance and the integration with electric utility and power delivery.
Yeah, I think more of this risk-based or condition-based vegetation management is going to be a big item in the near future. And I'll say we've worked with different vendors recently, whether it's on our transmission or distribution system. We've worked with 2 different vendors, but I sit on a committee for condition-based vegetation management, so helping guide the industry into this specific type. But ultimately, the continuous improvement piece is going to use risk to determine and get ourselves out of that normal cycle-based, hey, we're going to be here every 4 years in industry.
Yeah.
No, we don't need to, right? Because the tree doesn't need it, or the impact on the customer isn't there, things like that. So I think that's the biggest item is ultimately being able to survey the tree canopy, and how that tree canopy is going to impact our safety and reliability over the next X years. And that's it's been deployed in our transmission system for quite some time, but I think getting that down into our distribution system where we're feeding our customers, and I'll say that the majority of our time is spent, is going to be a big improvement as far as our space is concerned. So
that's terrific. Jim, thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
Yep. Thanks for having me.
Definitely. Thank you for listening in to The Green Voice. I'm Grant Ervin with S&B USA. Thanks for listening in, and we will see you on the next episode. Be well and be safe.